doesn't include the local people, or doesn't really try to see or incorporate the environmental damage and try to minimize, they don't minimize the negative externality of that. And that cost has came with a lot of negative price that is even difficult to reverse at a certain point. If you take the Awash Valley, for example, it's the homeland, the whole Rift Valley of Awash Valley is a homeland to 18 million people, all the way in Oromia to Afar and Somali. And the biggest river that would pass through is the Awash. There are a lot of tributaries that goes to Awash. And the Awash is the most polluted river, if you could imagine. It's starting from the sewage from Addis or Finfinne. And then now the lake that I just showed you is one of the biggest polluted water body in the Rift Valley. So by virtue, whatever government is saying we are developing or we are producing, the agriculture, everything is contaminated. How on earth that the government developing such large scale agriculture producing with highly polluted water? So if they don't care for the citizens themselves, nobody cares about the small communities, or for the sake of Karayu, nobody cares about Karayu if they don't care for the larger scale of policy. So this needs bigger political will, political shift, ecological shift, plus policy that really underpin or try to unpack what is the best way to approach this. Plus, if we have to push such kind of development scheme, what outweighs what, which is the negative, which is the positive, and dividing those and trying to see the good part and the bad part, and trying to minimize the bad part and take the good part, needs a political shift, plus the policy that really works in that directions. And in all these mess, the indigenous groups like Karayu, who has been marginalized for years, are already at the age of really collapse, and they literally become environmental refugees. And on top, when the politics is such a fragile, I mean, the rest is the story. I've already said earlier in my slide.
Thank you very much, Roman. Further questions?
Okay, thank you all for your wonderful presentations. I have some questions to Dr. Katari. First, did you make in your analysis a distinction in terms of job opportunity, for example, whether it is between job in regional states and the federal states, because the language, access to language, and then the job, because of the fact that Amharic is the only one in federal offices, and if you make any distinction in terms of such discrepancies or differences
For the salary.
for the salary, yeah. And Gultu, thank you very much for this very good presentation, putting this environmental injustice into the context. That also leads to what Roba presented. I want to ask you to elaborate a little bit on, from a critical political economy perspective, or what we call liberation ecology. What do you think critical researchers or advocacy organizations and so on would do using this framework? Because it's not only unpacking the challenge, but also we need to go one step towards reversing such environmental injustice. And I think that could also go into Roga's presentation, but maybe it is to go to. Dr. Taylor, thank you very much. I really like it. I don't have questions for that, but I appreciate it. I think it was well done.
At the back. I'm kidding.
Okay, thank you so much. My question is for Dr. Kari. I do have two questions.
The first one is what's the positionality of the researchers and data collectors in terms of doing data collection and analysis. My second question is on your finding. What it means for Oromo and for Ethiopia in general? For Hutu and Roma, I think you have a comment that's social ecological system approach, which now is really is a main framework that we can magnify the Oromo causes, especially the three questions that autonomy, self-autonomy, self-governance, and the other one is Duma. So that we have to work on that one, and I appreciate that approach, and a lot of questions were raised for good for the Hutu. That's nice. And for Roma, I think Karegu is a living land for Oromo in addition to Borana. So we need to really work on that to bring up the Oromo causes, especially to bring up the Oromo traditional ecological knowledge and cultural system to bring up to just hybrid with the current modernization and then develop the Veda system and others. So that's good approach. And for Dr. Galato, I think you presented a very nice way forward, and it could be nice if we could start working on that strategic document. I think I can say strategic, or if we can get that document, it would be very good to start up thinking how to enhance that multicultural democracy, even not within Ethiopia, but within Oromo itself, because in Gada system we have different diversity, and so we need to really capitalize on that multicultural diversity. So let's collaborate and work on that one. Thanks so much.
Okay,
what do you mean by multinational democracy? What does that mean in the first place? Especially as it applies to Ethiopia. And the related question is that there are people in Ethiopia who do not believe in equality, elite, or even I don't want to name it, but I just want to say there are people, a group of people, an ethnic group who just don't believe in equality. Is it possible to build our own national democracy in Ethiopia, where you have spoilers who do not believe it, who do not believe in equality, and is multinational democracy possible where a group of people are hurt of the mix, but they just don't subscribe to the basic notion of democracy. Thank you for the paper. This may be just about assumptions. What is the purpose of mother tongue instruction? Is it to facilitate basic learning outcomes at the primary level, or is it to prepare people for the labor market? Now, it is also to prepare for the labor market. Those skills that are necessary for employment usually come much later, not at the primary level. But I think that the mother tongue instruction always focuses on the primary and maybe secondary level. How do you differentiate that? The acquisition of the skills that are necessary for employment or for salary. And today, the competition for the labor market is not just national, it's not just continental, it's global. So, okay, so one of the findings that you're finding is that it has a positive, mother tongue instruction has a positive impact within the country of origin, but doesn't help people to acquire international language. So what would be the impact in that respect? Like just these are basic assumptions about education in South Africa. That's it.
Okay, thank you. The questions are to Udu, Roma, Teleto, and then Zachary. We'll go in that order answering the questions. Udu?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the questions. So Asabe's questions as to what to do, what do critical researchers in the tradition of liberation ecology and advocates, environmental advocates could do or should do. I think the most important part is the intricacies and the interconnected nature of these dire socioeconomic and environmental situations need to be clear. And for that reason, probably what we know is still little. So digging into the realities pertaining to the interconnectedness and the real material impacts of these realities on people need to be researched. And in the process, actually, what we are trying to do then, if we locate hotspots of problems pertaining to environmental pollution, for example, as Roba is doing, if that could be uncovered or made visible in a context whereby the state actively tries to make it invisible, then the first step is to study and document and present it for platforms that could use for advocacy purposes. Again, political ecology has a lot of potential to offer in this relation, because the idea of liberation ecology itself actually is rooted in decolonial approach to understanding environment, society relations. So making it visible in a context whereby the state is actively trying to make it invisible. Okay, we don't know really all the problems that are pertainingly currently actually severely affecting our people. That which we know is not exposed yet. Okay, exposing what has been known, what has been studied, and studying what has not been studied yet is probably one of the main things that we can do as critical scholars in the field. Very briefly on this question of self-governance or something that connects to self-governance, if that is addressed to me, I actually encourage to look for alternatives. Now we are unhappy, not just unhappy. The situation of our people is so dire that it is a question, it has become a question of existential threat. While that is not something that should be repeated in a context as if we are hopeless, but that situation should be taken seriously and alternatives should be sought, as I said earlier, not within what is provided by the Ethiopian state, but without the Ethiopian state. Being unhappy with the way the world is governed, actually being unhappy with the state of development and the inequality that is reigning across the world, people are trying to seek for alternatives to development, not within development. That is a notion of post-development. And I think in that context, the Oromo could somehow try to rethink, reflect on possibilities of envisioning its own alternative visions of development as to how to conceptualize development itself and what sort of practice should evolve from there. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Robert, do you have anything to say?
I think Guto has covered a lot. The only thing that I would I would add is in terms of development, what Ethiopian government has been following still, I will go back to the pattern and then where we are going today. Apart from the physical discerning that is happening to us, the environmental issue plays critical role because we have a lot of values that as Oromo, when I say we as Oromo, we have a lot of values that for the environment, what connect us to the environment, and a lot of things are on the ground. And as a good to say, it's those things has to come up, and we need to do deeper research that would really not to take the concept of development as it is, but think out of the box and present those things. For example, in the campaign of global climate agenda, for the first time last year at the Sharm el-Sheikh COP 27, the issue of adaptation and the issue of loss and damage became at the top agenda. And what does it mean that? Adaptation has been ignored for years. I mean, since the Rio. And for the first time, it became an agenda now. But if adaptation comes to the Ethiopian government will take that adaptation agenda as a climate change because the funding comes from bilateral funding, which is global funding, and put into still the concept of simple development state that's still damaging the environment. But if we do have those local values, environmental values that Oromo has, and think out of the box and be able to advocate for what we want to, than what the government or the development want to, we can shift those agendas. And climate change will bring a lot of damage. And the only way we could resist further is to think out of the box, to utilize the positive value, the very rich environmental value that Oromo has already, whether it's in the Ngeda system, whether it's in the institution we have it, we can work with that and make it better than this daunting system that really pushed out further.
Thank you very much. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. My ideas about multicultural democracy in Ethiopia are very much a work in progress, and I do not have an action plan written down. And it's one of the main thrusts of my argument is that the plan should be developed at a grassroots level, not dictated from above by people like me, but by ordinary people. In terms of the meaning of the multicultural democracy, I said, not multinational. Although maybe that's splitting hairs. And then you asked about the meaning of it by a multicultural democracy. I think it means people of different cultures living together and prospering together in cooperation and living democratically. I'm not saying that it's the sort of democracy that we see in the West. The people who don't believe in equality, how can a multinational democracy develop? How can a multicultural democracy develop? As I said, I think it begins with holding human rights at the very top of your agenda. So the primacy of human rights, individual human rights, is where it should all begin. And people will learn. To begin with, yes, security is one of the 5 pillars that was talked about, not only in my presentation, I copied that from strategic action plans that circulated some time ago. And security is one of those pillars, and we will have to obviously protect the population area from these influences until those dangers no longer exist. And I believe that they will evolve of that, the Amhara psyche. As you know, there are groups of Amhara settlers in West Walda who are on video saying that they're very glad to be protected by the Oromo Liberation Army. And we have a copy of that video on the OSU website. And experience will take a long time to correct the disinformation and bias that Amhara people have been indoctrinated with over the centuries. It's a question of education and waiting for this hatred to dissipate. And we have to look at ourselves and make sure that we don't stir up the argument by being confrontational and adversarial in dealing with Amhara. And as I said, the hatred, we need to lose there in order to succeed. And finally, in terms of famine and drought, I just wanted to stick my hatred in. Amartya Sen, an economist at Oxford, in about 1961 or 62, he said that you do not get famine in a functioning democracy. And this has never been disproved since. You do not get famine in a functioning democracy. And that's the difference between famine and drought.
Thank you very much. That also was this Indian economist who
That's it. Amartya Sen.
yeah, what you said, you know. Okay, Dr. Khalai.
Okay, thank you. I think I have questions from three different audience members. The first question was by Aseba with regards to the distinction between federal and state jobs, I believe. The data does not make that distinction, by the way. It's asks whether they are employed by the in a salary employment or not. Nothing more, nothing less. But based on the knowledge that information, we all know that most public sector employment is state job, right? Not federal government, state job. For instance, teachers are hired by state governments. Healthcare professionals are hired by state government. So we could make a reasonable deduction here that the subjects that are included in this study are mostly working for the state government if they are employed. Does that make it clear? Yeah. But we don't, it does not identify whether they are federally employed or employed by the states or their respective states. My friend from back there, I'm not sure his name, but he asked me about the positionality of the researcher and also what does it all mean? What are the implications, I think, of the question. Good questions. In terms of the positionality, I didn't conduct the survey, so I cannot speak on behalf of those who implemented the survey on the ground. But based on the fact that these are credible institutions or working with credible institutions, faculty members at Oxford who oversaw the implementation of the survey. By the way, that survey is not is implemented not just in Ethiopia, but across the globe in developing countries. Not all developing countries, but selected developing countries. India is one of them, and there is a couple of other, but we focus on the data from Ethiopia. So I cannot, guarantee that they pursued this ideal principle of a researcher when they conduct a household survey or a school survey, whatever it may be. But we can fairly assume that they understand this very well. The implications, what could be done about it? So what does it mean? What it means is really institutions and policies must be adjusted, okay, to optimize the developmental impacts of mother tongue instruction. That's what it means. As it stands currently, the overall social infrastructure in Ethiopia does not support a more robust implementation of the language of instruction policy that was implemented in 1994. So, for instance, specifically, regional states may consider instituting labor laws that afford workers the legal right to work in their native languages in their respective states. And this is not new to Oromia. Multinational democracies like Canada and I believe Belgium have these types of, and Switzerland have these types of laws. Employers are obligated to hire workers in the language they speak. So basically expanding what was started in the early 90s, deepening it is what I'm proposing here. What the implication of this study is. Coming to Ezekiel's question, what was the purpose of the policy was the first one, I believe. And obviously, the purpose of the policy was to promote learning, right? To facilitate learning. With the expectation, I'm assuming that increasing cognitive capacity would translate, or increased cognitive capacity would translate into enhanced employment opportunities. That is what the literature in labor economics suggests. Increased cognitive capacity definitely has the advantage of sort of increasing your employment opportunities and whatnot. There's no controversy when it comes to that. So that's basically what we would expect to see when students are sort of learning better and know better, so their labor market prospects should increase as well. That's what we should expect. If you don't mind clarifying for me, I think you asked me 3 questions. The second one was about skills. What kind of skills do they learn?
Yeah, I was assuming that for one to be employed, they needed skills that are served to the labor market.
Yeah, the skills they acquire are the skills that should help them in their labor market. Their numeracy has increased significantly. Their knowledge of math has increased considerably, really considerably. And when you look at the standard deviation, the sort of the improvement in those scores, that should somehow be marketable, whether it's national in the national labor market or in the international labor market. So I think that addresses both your questions. Have we conducted a study internationally? No, of course not. But a national study can reasonably be used to suggest that this is a skill that they have acquired, so their opportunities should increase as well.
Okay, thank you. I have the panelists for this session. Next session, we'll tell us what to do.
Okay. Yeah. Now we proceed to the last session, which is very brief. Using the opportunity that we but we want to wrap up this conference main points by raising kind of major questions in which the presenters from today and also from yesterday, from the room and also from the online can address briefly. And it won't take much of our time. So Professor Mercuria will moderate and give the chance to the speakers from today and also from maybe 3 minutes each, and we present that.
Yes, thank you very much. From yesterday and from today. In Africa, we thought of a summary of the conference. The question yesterday dealt with generally the violence, marginalization, and the social this position almost experiencing as part of the broader context of global and economic systems now. And from this perspective, what do you think should the Oromo do? It is a question to the people present the papers. Under this can be in terms of research.
Closer to the mic. Can you speak just closer to the mic? Yeah, we're just having a hard time hearing.
What should the Oromo do in terms of research, in terms of advocacy, in terms of diplomacy, and the struggle? What is expected from us, from the president, from the policymakers, to have with discuss a sort of summary of what has been said yesterday and today. I'll give to the speakers 2 to 3 minutes to reflect on this question. I start with today's presenters and I scared from yesterday. Can you join us again?
The recording has stopped. This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, we start with the panels in the room. This can you start from yesterday and ask questions or speak. What should we do in terms of research, in terms of advocacy, diplomacy, struggle regarding the issues we have that are raised, and a lot is said, of course. A lot of research is needed. We have to make more research as a scholar. Advocacy, we have to work, on the issue of the Oromo issue, work in the diplomacy. And then, of course, struggle has to continue. What do we need to add to what is going on in this instance?
Okay.
I think you can use that mic. This mic is not working on the thing. So yeah, just sorry about it. Yeah, it's not picking up on the audio. Yeah, just really as close as you can be to the standing mic. These are wired. Yeah, thank you.
I think that Oromo Studies Association, as far as the struggle is concerned, the almost 14 years, have done a magnificent job of introducing the Oromo to the young community. The record speaks to the Journal of Oromo Studies, the proceedings that used to be published, the impact in terms of increasing knowledge about the Oromo. Not just knowledge about the Oromo, but the knowledge which the Oromos themselves produced. That is, other people could do research on the Oromo and disseminate that knowledge to the rest of the world. But for the Oromos themselves, to produce knowledge that comports very well with what they want the rest of the world to know about them is a significant achievement. So the Oromo Studies Association has its bylaws. Sometimes bylaws constrain what you're able to do because there is no agreement among the members of the Oromo Studies Association as to what your OSA does. The agreement is that the bylaws. So as far as the bylaws are concerned, it's about to produce, reproduce, and disseminate knowledge about the Oromo. In terms of history, anthropology, economics, law, culture. Also, in that respect, OSA has made tremendous contribution to the Oromo cause and to Oromo society. The other aspect of OSA is it's not just the generation of knowledge, but it is also knowledge that can be used. It's practical knowledge in that respect. All the universities now we have in Oromia, in Ethiopia, they have Oromo studies, or Gada studies, or some other aspect of the Oromo as institutes in all of those universities. In some of them, in some of them in the founding of them, we were asked to help when like I was in position of leadership in OSA, in terms of reproducing the knowledge, not just the production, but to actually produce the knowledge producers, and that has not had a multiplying effect. So as far as knowledge creation is concerned, OSA has done a tremendous job. And even today and yesterday, the frontier of knowledge where we operate is gratifying. To be able to look back and see that, it's really gratifying. So that it is about environmental justice, political ecology, employment, mother tongue education. Remember that there was mother tongue instruction. There was a time when the mother tongue was not used. Now we are actually living in that is a lot of progress in terms of practical impact of what the Oromo Studies OSA had done. But like I say, to be known or as we want to be known is one thing. To have practical impacts on the knowledge service, the multiplying effect, the creation of institutions, that's tremendous. But the Oromo struggle itself was transformed, was really transformed under the knowledge that OSA produces. From creating a knowledge about the Oromo that is resistant to Ethiopian knowledge creation about the Oromo in the 1980s. It was a resistant education, pushing back to having an meaning to the Oromo studies, Oromo nationalism, to define what Oromo nationalism, from resistance to actually resistant nationalism or negative nationalism, that the nationalism is against something rather than for something. Today, the nationalism itself is about positive nationalism. It's about wanting our own back rather than being against something. If that is clear, what I mean is that the Oromo nationalism is today, it's not an anti-nationalism, it's actually an Oromo nationalism about the reinstatement of what we lost. It's about the love of the Oromo rather than the hateful and that. That's also an achievement of the Oromo Studies Association. What should be done? There was a question yesterday about the international system. The way the international system knows is not the way we portrayed ourselves in OSA for the last 30, 40 years. We're still seen as defined by others. The way the international system gets to know the Oromo and Oromo nationalism or the Oromo struggle is that we are iconoclast. We're there only to destroy, to decapitate a state. That's what we're still doing. That means the impact, as important as it was, as I just described it, hasn't gotten to that level. Would that mean OSA should change its constitution and create an advocacy organization? Translate the knowledge that was created to actually having an impact on the international system so that we are known for what we have and for what we stand for rather than being defined by outsiders. What should we do? It's a matter for OSA now to decide, well, is advocacy the work of advocacy, not only the creation of knowledge and dissemination of knowledge about the Oromo on Oromo terms, but also advocacy. So that is what I was saying, that maybe also to think about this and have an advocacy on rather than impact in the area where we're still on the
Thank you. As Ezekiel said, I think we should persist in what OSA has been doing. This conference has given me lots of new information, including Catherine's paper just now, and new ideas from yesterday's presentation from Gaveni in terms of the looking beyond accountability in the immediate level for human rights, we're looking at the structural responsibility for human rights abuses. And Ezekiel's ideas about the bigger scale of history and how this is going to be impacted upon by the Oromo. The deepening of knowledge that we have, yesterday's papers, which are brilliantly from Ethiopia, which is landmark stuff from Gindar and Marga, and the film that we've just been from Rover. And in fact, I found it very, very moving and profound without any of the sound. And I think the sound might have been distracting rather than adding to the thing. I was profoundly moved by that and the sense of potential loss that film showed. So OSA should continue what it does well in terms of information gathering and dissemination. And obviously we should continue to document human rights abuses and continue to disseminate the information that we have to the so-called international community. So this conference to me has been very successful, and we should continue to do the same.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
I don't really have much to say. No additional insights. I'm going to reiterate what has been said in terms of gathering evidence. We continue to conduct rigorous studies and disseminate the knowledge that is created as widely as possible. I'm not so convinced about the gap that Ezekiel identified in terms of advocacy work. Whether OSA should really pick up that challenge, I'm not so convinced. It might be appropriate for other institutions to try to fill in that gap, and OSA to remain the primary generator of knowledge about the Oromo people, and not just about the Oromo people, but other people in the Horn of Africa in general. And maybe one more point to outline or to sort of add here might be, we need to encourage young people to take up these challenges. There has always been this generational divide, even within OSA. You know, the young people feel like they're not represented always. I'm not saying the sort of the senior scholars in OSA are not trying to include them, but somehow there's this tension. I mean, I felt it when I was the president, and the complaints you hear, all of you hear these complaints. They're not new. We probably within OSA need to be as cognizant as possible to the needs and demands of the youth and try to include them as much as possible. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. That is well, and you are already very active in OSA. You see, the secretary, and you see Roba, you see even we go to the press. There are so many young people here. So people like me, we have worked for almost 40 years. And now these are working after us, and they are going to come forward and they lead. So it's, we have come. Now I give chance to Buzu and Roba. Oh,
Many are on from yesterday.
and then Asap, are you there, Dr. Asap?
He's there, he is co-host, so he, Dr. Seva, please feel free to unmute yourself. You have co-hosting ability. Cindy, yeah, Melissa, you can also, you're free to unmute yourself.
Well, let them do it in the meantime.
Here
So
comes
Buzu and
No case is here now.
Can you hear me?
yeah, we do.
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity again. I want to comment on the nature of Ethiopian state and the role it is, playing in the Amhara expansionism to Oromia or the direction of Karayu that was presented by Roba and Gimbar yesterday, and also Gamechu Abashu also presented the Amhara's expansion into Oromia and how the role of Ethiopian government, the role of Oromia government in this perspective. And I want to comment the nature of Ethiopian state and the nature of Oromia state. But before I comment on that, if there is a change in Ethiopian state, the nature of Ethiopian state, the political nature of Ethiopian state, and if there is change for the Oromo people, I believe that OSA can change its direction, its leadership, its mission, its vision. As long as the Oromo problem persists, I don't see, because I was part of Ethiopian state for over 2 years, and I have at least 2 year experience in the party structure, in government, and in bureaucracy, how things are working. And so I recommend OSA to continue what it started 40 or 30 years ago, and that is my personal observation. The knowledge we need is, I think we have to continue because the situation that our people are in probably is far worse than 5 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago, from my own personal perspective. And I don't recommend OSA to be radical than what it was. And for me, OSA has been moderate in producing consumable knowledge. I was part of students who opened up his or her eyes, reading OSA's publications, researches, and productions. And so I have to acknowledge that, and I have to thank OSA for doing that productive works. And I recommend OSA should should be consistent in this regard, and keep on producing. And this time I don't see even production on in this regard. And and I directly go to our main topic. I felt that my presentation was similar with except geographical areas, but there are similarities across presentations. Yesterday I focused on Central Oromia and Gimbar, and today Roba Bulga focused on Karayu, and Gamachu Abashu focused on Western Oromia, Walaga. Why this is happening today? Why it continued to happen? This started 200 years ago, but it continued. Expansion continued in another way. So my major explanation should be the nature of Ethiopian state itself, and how it sees the Oromo, and how it keep that type of attitude towards the Oromo public. For example, I was member of the Central Committee of the ODP. I have been part of the problem during my stay in the government and in the party. I know, many things, and so for an Oromo person to join Ethiopian state or Oromia state, he or she has to join the party, whether it is civil servant position, bureaucracy, police force, judge, anything that is part of the Oromia government or federal government of Ethiopia, you are required, not by law, but by political practice, that you need to be member of the party. You go through party's line, and you have to pass the party's requirement. So what is this party's requirement? An Oromo should be, you have to buy the ideology of the party. You have to, there is a boundary for you to run in, work in, think within that boundary. If you go beyond that, the party, they say, will eat you. So many have been eaten. So the party system and the party ideology and political programs and the attitudes of party, whether it is during the EPRDF or DERG or Workers' Party of Ethiopia or Prosperity Party of Ethiopia, the same institution, the same type of ideology work. The same type of approach towards Oromo has been pursued. Therefore, my argument is an Oromo joins Ethiopian government bureaucracy or police force or leadership, not to defend the Oromo's national interest, but to defend the party's interest. People say state party fusion, it goes beyond that. The state is the,
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Please summarize for us because you have used your 2 minutes.
okay, yeah, right, yeah. So the state is there to serve party's interest, and the party is above the state, not equivalent or a kind of a fusion, but party is above everything. Therefore, an Oromo's personal behavior, thinking, and his or her Oromoness should be governed, and it should be managed. Otherwise, you will be, you cannot stay within the party or within the government or bureaucracy, civil service. Every 3 months, all members of civil servants in Oromia should take training, party training. So we go and brainwash, that was a kind of things that I want to mention. And therefore, Oromia's government is not there to defend the national interest of the Oromo people. Therefore, any invasion, any annexation, any occupation of Oromo land can happen, and without any resistance from the Oromia government or local governments. As a result, even the members of the Gada leaders in Karayu massacred, and the Amhara nationalists and expansionists were allowed to occupy more than 10 kabales, and that is a kind of a joint operations. Therefore, this is what I want. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, Roma, Udu, I don't know if others are there. Asafa, can you continue with the questions? Dr. Gutu, Roma, Dr. Asafa?
Dr. Makuria,
Yeah.
I don't know what I joined later. I don't know what the question is. I don't know what I have to address. I have been traveling. Can you shortly tell me what I should talk on?
Yeah. The issue is like this. We have had tensions from yesterday up to now.
Please talk to the louder speaker. I don't hear you clearly.
Yeah, we have been discussing issues since yesterday. Ideas have come up, but of course we know what we have discussed, but we want sort of a summary of what has been said. Not only on your paper, but what we want to say is, from the perspective of what has been said, from yesterday and today, what do you think should the Oromo do in terms of research, in terms of advocacy, or diplomacy, and in terms of continuous struggle? Sort of a reflection of what we have been saying.
It's a very general topic. I'm not sure whether I get it very well, but let me say a few things. I think that what has been discussed is good, but it's not well focused, particularly considering the problems that we are facing today. Sometimes we forget that we are facing very survival issue. We have been targeted for destruction. I don't know how many of us understand that. We are facing a very dangerous time during the last decades of 19th century. And because that confusion comes from misunderstanding the nature of the Ethiopian state, misunderstanding the nature of the current government. So we are not well focused on what we are doing, and what we can do is only we do what we can do if we survive as a people. Really, I believe that our survival is under question. Every indicator shows that from all directions, different forces want to take Oromo land, want to subjugate Oromos and continue to humiliate and destroy us. I don't think OSA or most of us are understanding or intentionally ignoring, or I don't know, intentionally ignoring it. Particularly the current regime, what's the intention of the current regime, which is wearing Oromo clothes, at the same time destroying Oromo. We are failing to understand that. And the role of OSA should be working on the survival of the Oromo. And the knowledge that we produce is not only for sake of knowledge, it should energize, organize Oromo people. In another word, we need knowledge for liberation. Not knowledge for sake of academic entertainment. It must directly show what's exactly happening to the Oromo and raise the consciousness of Oromo. Because Oromos themselves are one way or the other are engaging in their own destruction. Some of them become Ethiopian forces. Some of them are just localizing, doing small things. And our people are facing a very threat. Our people are facing threat. OSA was created to produce knowledge for liberation. Unfortunately, the knowledge we produce don't reach to the people. Books, articles, they don't reach to the people. And we are living in exile. We produce in English. The knowledge we produce do not directly reach to our people. OSA should try to, one way or the other, finding mechanisms of disseminating the knowledge that have been produced, written in the books and articles in different forms. And I think Oromo scholars should not entertain the idea of becoming neutral. We have not that kind of, we don't have that kind of condition. Like Dr. Walakeessa is telling us, the Ethiopian state, if you are Oromo, if you want to show your Oromoness, your Oromo identity, your Oromo ideology, there is no place for you. In order to live in that system, you have to be compromised. You have to run away from identity, your humanity. You have to act like robot. I think people like Dr. Walakeessa have moral responsibility to come out and show, demonstrate to the people what kind of state exists in, whether regional or national, federal, so-called federal. There is no federal government in Ethiopia, but whatever name they call, what kind of objectives they have for the Oromo people. Because he lived in the system, he showed how the system works, he's tired of it and he left. So living alone is not enough. Also, briefly mentioning those things are not enough. It is very important to demonstrate to the people that they are facing very serious danger. And the name Ethiopia is really hostile to the Oromo. It wants to try to destroy Oromo. More than anything, the Ethiopian state doesn't want to see an independent Oromo entity, an independent Oromo organizations, whether they are political organizations, academic institutions, or religious institutions. They want to subordinate and destroy the Oromo people.
Okay, thank you very much. You have used 2 minutes.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Now I will want to give very short time, 2 minutes each to Utu and Yumba.
Thank you. I will be brief. One, any colonial project actually starts by committing some kind of epistemic injustice. What OSA has been doing is to reverse that trend and counter by rectifying and producing Oromo knowledge that counteracts that epistemic injustice that has been committed against our people. And that is a commendable job, which has come very far. And the pioneers of OSA and those who followed in their footsteps should be commended for that. Only one point to add. Now, 2 layers of attention are at stake. One has to do with the issues that has urgently engaged us. But the other one is looking long-term solutions and alternatives. In that sense, probably we need to look beyond Oromo questions, Oromo national interests, and try to see how it engages with international system in a way, not to compromise Oromo interest, but really to see the synergy. In that sense, we need to look for ways of appropriating the national trend in advancing our people's interest, which means for me, for example, to be specific, pertaining to environmental justice, there are trends of thinking in terms of planetary justice, for example, multi-species justice, and inclusive terms that actually includes humans and non-humans. And that trend is not very far from Oromo cosmology, Oromo worldview. And probably young scholars in this field could be encouraged to pursue how to really think about what local indigenous knowledge of Oromo could really capitalize on the international, the trend that is going at international level. We see alternatives being introduced, for example, from Latin America through conceptualizing development in terms of living well, buen vivir, they call it, and concepts of Ubuntu is being propagated to some extent from Africa, but indigenous cosmology or knowledge system that comes from Oromo knowledge system is not pretty much used, or at least not really to that extent. So we can think of similar trend that could be cultivated within Oromo, especially by young scholars in the field, and OSA could support this process. Thank you very much.
I'm not here, so I thank everybody, the finalists and the participants, and now I give the floor to our chairman. Oh, President.
Okay, thank you, Professor Priya, for moderating this session for a long time now. I've been from our case, our thank you very much, the presenters, and also the ones who joined from yesterday. to wrap up today's session or the today's session generally. Before I close the conference, I would like to also give the chance to the OSA board chair, Lady Janata, to give online view.
Do you see me?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Sorry, I've been to
So,
those.
Kulani, welcome, and after Kulani's short closing remark, then I will also conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saba. So as we close out this conference, on behalf of the OSA Board of Directors, I would like to first express my deepest thanks to the conference organizers, the OSA President, Dr. Saba, and all of the presenters, and all of you who've attended in person and virtually from different corners of the globe. We appreciate you. We appreciate the work or support of each of you. I especially want to thank again the OSA conference presenters. All of you have made deeply informative presentations that both enlighten us and challenge us. And for some of the presentations, to be honest, I think the findings were devastating to hear. These presentations, I'd just like to summarize a little bit about what I sort of realized while listening to all the presentations. They give us a snapshot of the Oromo condition, politically, economically, environmentally, and also the historical factors that led to these conditions. And I wanted to highlight a few key themes that I think connect many of the presentations, just as a takeaway for all of you. So many of the presentations demonstrated the unrelenting consistency of successive Ethiopian regimes, including the current regime of the Prosperity Party under Abiy Ahmed, the consistency of these regimes to perpetuate state terrorism against the Oromo people, violent land grabbing, expropriation through settlements, supporting violent Amara expansionism into Oromia, devastating environmental injustices, and widespread violence against Oromo civilians, political dissidents, or opposition as an attempt to silence resistance. And the other consistent theme is that although these successive Ethiopian regimes have experienced upheavals from the people to resist these oppressive conditions, including the Qeerroo and Qarree student protest movement that led to the upheaval in 2018, the Ethiopian state continues to maintain its tactics of terrorism and violence to maintain Dinabs-Anya or settler colonial structures that seek to take resources and destroy lives simply for profit. So this begs the question, and I think in this last session, we were getting to this question of what are the solutions to these conditions? I realize that's a very challenging question, and some may even question whether OSA is the space to answer and provide solutions to this crisis, long-standing crisis in Oromia. But I personally believe, on my behalf, I personally believe this is the appropriate space to try to answer that question. I want to leave you all on thinking about, or I encourage all of you, scholars, students, conference presenters, now and in the future, to think about how to bring to the forefront of your research and what you present at OSA, to bring to the forefront solutions, whether they're policy rooted or otherwise, that directly address the Oromo condition to the forefront, and to provide tangible solutions that are rooted in liberation as a solution, in respect for human rights and the larger objective of democracy. I do believe that this kind of work is still within academic studies. It's within the realm of knowledge production. And I think it will allow for the expansion of OSA's platform, our audience, and most importantly, OSA's impact. And in closing, I would like to acknowledge that OSA is the singular academic space in the diaspora that cultivates the type of discourse and truth-seeking analysis that presents to a global audience the reality of the Oromo condition, historically and present. And I think this is an incredibly important institution. As you all know, it's been doing this work for over 3 decades. But in order for us to continue this work, and Dr. Tafari mentioned this in his remarks, in order for us to continue doing this work and to continue growing, I encourage you, each of you, and all of us to continue to invest in OSA, to bring more scholars, younger scholars, new scholars, and students into this organization, and to really invest not only in knowledge production, but cultivating a new generation that will continue this momentum, and finally to educate others in Oromo society at large about the importance of this institution to advancing Oromo studies and the Oromo people. So I'll just close on that note. Thank you all again. Baye Galatoma, Jajabatu, and I hope to see you all at the annual conference. I'll leave those details to the OSA president, Dr. Asaba. Thank you.
Thank you, Kulali, for the very nice concluding remark. I don't want to repeat the details what Kulali has said. I'm really happy that we learned a lot from the presentations over these two days. The papers which were presented really gave us part of the violence, the atrocities, the environmental injustice, and generally the suffering our people are undergoing. It's not entirely the detail because we can't really cover the detail of our people's conditions within only the short conference. But it gives us the motivation and the encouragement that we started research and the commitment that we are also seeing from young researchers in different parts of the world, actually, from Oromia and in other institutions. We are going to produce knowledge as others have been, the seniors have been doing over the last 3 decades. So thank you very much, the presenters, participants, for asking questions, engaging critically, and also for generally for producing this knowledge. I want to give you a remark that we are going to have a kind of a more broader discussion during the annual conference, which would be in DC. We'll announce the exact date and the call for paper very soon. And we also expect many applicants, participants to submit their paper for the annual conference. Lastly, again, as I said yesterday, this conference would have not been possible without the active contribution of the organizing committee. Thank you very much. And also the Oromo community of Berlin for hosting us, and also for the hospitality they have shown, particularly the women who prepared also the lunch, today's lunch for us. So thank you very much for welcoming us. Galatoma, Maayii Horabula.
Yeah.